Good afternoon, this is Terrell again, and we just got a new car in. I normally don't record these cars out here, just because it's so repetitive, but this one is pretty bad. Look in here, this is our beginning. It just gets worse every couple seconds you look. It is currently locked up. Got coil packs hanging out, got the turbo stuff all open. Throttle body isn't on. You can kind of just see things. This fuel line was touching where the battery was. Intake's just kind of hanging out. Got rotors in the front seats. The front end is not there. I don't have a name for this Deborah or STI yet, but I got the engine home. It's sitting right there. I already saw the back power steering bolt broke off, but it doesn't matter because we're going to use a new short block anyways. I need to get these heads off, timing off, the headers off, and then the new short block is right there. We finally just got the heads back, and we're going to go and start installing them on this new block. This is where I left off on the other block. So the timing stuff broke, the covers broke. I got to get the oil pan bolts off, and then the sensor off, and pull the rest of the water pump stuff off. But this is the new block, and I just put the head gasket on. I'm going to go ahead and put one of the heads on, torque this all down. I'll show you when that's all done, and then we're going to assemble the rest of this block, and then, of course, towards the end of the video, this should be all done. Bring it back to the shop, put the rest of the accessories on, and then installing it in the car, and then I guess I'll show you kind of best I can of what happens with the car, because obviously, as you've seen, it looks terrible. There's no front end, no nothing. This old engine is unreal for getting some of these things off. Just bolts break everywhere. Let me show you how bad this is. I got this bolt out finally, but that bolt, coil crossover broke off. That one broke off. That one broke off. This oil, or this crank sensor is seized in there. This all broke off here, and power steering pump rear bolt broke off. It's just, everything's just breaking. So I got to get the knob sensor swapped over, that air pump motor thing over. I don't think I'm gonna do this oil pressure. I'm just gonna do OEM for now, and then in the front, I'm pretty much completely taking care of all the bolts. This 20, I believe it's like a 13 STI motor, is really coming along now. We got both timing covers on, oil pump, water pump, everything on. Newer pulleys. Missing this line still, and then I have to replace this line as well. I got the turbo on though. Headers are tight. Air pump stuff's all on. I got these things more clean with a drill on both sides. So she is getting there. Gonna go ahead and time it in a few minutes, and then this is gonna be ready to go back to the shop as the intake manifold is at the shop. So time marks are on. We've got dotted line, solid line, solid line. Looks like she's right on the money there. Solid line. And solid line. This build has been kind of all over the place, but I got the block all ready to go back in the car. It's sitting on the lift. I still have to install the oil cooler, but I'm going to do that after it's actually in the car. Last time you saw the car, it looked terrible. It's cleaned up quite a bit. We replaced the entire bottom here, and new throw bearing installed. We're going to go ahead and drop the engine. It's sitting right there. I hope you enjoyed those time lapses. Now, this is gonna be a little bit of a story, about a minute long. Hopefully you can watch through all this. So got everything hooked up with the engine, got in the car, went to go turn the key on, and we had power. But the car would not start no matter what I did. Now for obvious things, I went to the battery cable to make sure everything was tight, and then I went to the starter, checked that I had voltage at the power and I had ground on the side. I checked the starter switch, and unfortunately, when you turn the ignition on, it only had 8 volts and it wouldn't go to 12, so it wasn't clicking the starter on. So the next step I went to was plugging the OBD2 in to see if we had any codes, and it wouldn't read at all. The second you turn the key on, it would just turn off. So I'd never seen that before. So the next step I went through was basically checking out the ECU, making sure it was correct, and then making sure no fuses were blown and everything was actually correct. And I went through a long procedure where I actually ended up pulling the dash out of this car. And I think I'll show you a clip on here of the dash out of the car. I had put a test meter down by the OBD2 port, and the 2 grounds actually had power when the ignition was on, which doesn't make any sense. So my next step was figure out where these grounds go and what's exactly going on. And I figured out one goes straight to the ECU, and I checked that out, and it didn't ohm out. We had a break, or we had some sort of weird issue there. And then I went through the starter circuit, pulled the relay out, and we had no ground on the starter, on the ground pin for the relay. So I was like, we have a major grounding issue. Now, normally I don't expect bolts that are tight and on cars to have issues. I just don't. But this car had a lot of rust on it, so I decided to go through it. And the wire from the battery to the strut tower had high resistance, and basically to the alternator had high resistance, and the transmission had high resistance. So we actually replaced the battery cables there, and then next step was basically to make sure. I have a friend in Montana who told me what to do as far as checking for grounds at the ECU. So I opened up the ECU area again, according to all data. So I used my voltmeter, and I tested to make sure I had grounds on all of them. I just grounded to a bolt on the side. I just ohmed them out, I guess is what I did. And 3 of them did have ground, 2 of them did not. And one of them, at the time, I didn't know where it was. I was trying to figure out where it went. So I went to the engine bay, and again, like I said, we replaced the battery cable stuff, and then I got all that to ohm out correctly. And then we still just didn't have any power. The OBD2 port would not turn the OBD2 reader on, and I could not understand why. So I figured out where all the ECU grounds go, and I checked, and the 2 bolts, the one going from the the transmission to the body, had high resistance, so I actually moved it. It was just on paint, so I moved it, and then it ohmed out. I checked the bolt on the passenger side of the intake manifold by the coolant upper reservoir, and super high resistance. Basically, it was like open. So I replaced the bolt with the one that wasn't rusty at all, and then I got it back in the car, and the OBD2 was already on. And so that's cool. So I turned the ignition on, and boom, all of a sudden it was correct. So then I made sure we had coolant and oil in the car, and then I hopped in it, and I went to go start it, and that's this clip here. So I guess if you have an issue where you potentially have an OBD2 port that is not connecting correctly, or you plug it in, turn the key on, and instead of it staying on, it turns off, this may be a major issue for you too. You might just have bad grounds on the intake or by the strut tower. One of those grounds could potentially be bad. So I just wanted to share this little update, and hopefully this helps somebody else in this situation. Now I'm gonna get the dash back in hopefully today, and make sure the interior is complete on this car. And then we're going to go ahead and do another start, and I'll end the video on a special note. I hope you like it. Putting the dash back in slowly, but I'll just show you how it looks right now. Currently this interior is ripped apart. You can see the dash kind of all over the place, but this will soon look perfect. Oh my goodness, look who started the car.